There we go. It looks like it is recording. So, welcome to everybody tonight. It is May 17th. May 17th. Interesting note for everybody. Remember, we will have a skip in this week. So our next meeting will be June 7th. There'll be 2 weeks between this and our next meeting because we meet the first and third Tuesday of each month. And this month we have an extra one. So enjoy your summer and your time off and your time with your family. Appreciate everybody being with us tonight, and those of you who'll be watching later. Don't have a lot of old business, new business to go through, and I think we've got an exciting program to get to. So I'm going to start off with our Pledge of Allegiance, if y'all would join me in reciting that, and then we'll turn it over to Bill for our invocation. So if y'all join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible. I just forgot the Pledge of Allegiance. Don't make me laugh. Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That is hands down the worst pledge I've done ever. I think my kindergartner could do that better.
Well, you're just gonna have to pledge to do better again.
We will pledge to do better. That is perfect. And you know, if I can't laugh at myself, I don't have to worry. Everybody else laughs at me anyway. I'm okay with that. So, Bill, if you will heal these wounds with your invocation.
We'll trust the Father to do that. Father, I thank you for your goodness, your mercy. I thank you that you've got a sense of humor, and that's one of the reasons that you gave us one. I pray that we will embrace yours and ours more so that we don't take certain things so seriously, but we take you all the more seriously. So tonight, I pray, Father, that you would lead Gordon to share what he needs to share, and that we'll have open hearts and minds so that we can receive some of the things he's going to tell us about. So bless us tonight is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill.
So Gordon MacFarlane, thank you for joining us today. And tell me a little bit about yourself, and let's kick this off.
Excellent. Well, I don't know if Bill had anything to say, because Bill's the reason I'm here. Bill and I met several months ago, and it was one of those cool connections. I call them divine connections. And it was just a really neat, we had kindred spirits, and it's just from the get-go. We connected on several levels, and we decided to start doing a little bit of collaborative work together. I'm a career coach in 2 areas. I live in Ottawa, Canada. Formerly lived in Alabama for just about 3 years. I worked in a private sector company there in Huntsville, Alabama, and loved it. My wife and I was there for about just under about 7 months, I guess, and then decided to move my family down, my wife and my 4 daughters, and it was an amazing experience for us. We loved it, and so much so that we call it our second home. And we would travel to Alabama every summer. My wife is a school teacher. We've been together for 40 years, married for 38, this summer. And every summer when school finishes, the number one thing my wife would want to do would be go to Alabama and see our daughter and our grandkids. So we haven't been able to do that in the last couple of years because of COVID. And I'm normally traveling on a regular basis, travel over 200 days out of the year, working in the NCAA in the athletic sector as an athletic performance mindset coach, as well corporations all over America. I mostly work in the United States, just where my path has led me. I've been working in the US with clients since 1991 in leadership coaching, entrepreneurship, business development, and performance mindset when it comes to human behavior. And it's been a real delight for me to do that. I'm an international best-selling author. Been traveling the world teaching on this subject matter. So it's a delight for me to be here tonight and to share with you and your listeners some of the material that Bill and I are starting to work on together collaboratively as we dive into what we call the human behavior approach to business, the human behavior approach to communication and sales, and anything you want to make it. Anything to add to that, Bill?
That pretty well got it. One of the things that is interesting to me in that regard is that when you start dealing with communication skills or the lack thereof, if a person is willing to learn new communication skills, then it's a life changer. for them, their family, co-workers, and things of that nature. And one of the things I really enjoy about this type of work is for me, it is an extension of ministry as well as business that can be expanded outside the four walls of a church building. So yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's life, right? Communications. I in my book, I have two particular chapters on selling, and I talk about selling is life and life is selling. As I get people all the time as a behavior specialist that say, well, I'm not good at sales. I'm not good at sales. I said, interesting. I said, are you married? And they said, oh yeah, I'm married. I said, then you sold probably better than you should have. We all have selling skills, right? It's about winning people to our way of thinking. People don't necessarily see it that way, but why they don't think they're in sales is because of fear. Right? It's one of the biggest things that keeps us from accomplishing all the things we want to accomplish. So Bill and I were chatting before, and I said, well, what should we be talking about, and what would you like me to present as a collaborative measure for you and I to share with the audience? And so we talked about a few things, and so I created a small PowerPoint here, and if you'd allow me, I'm going to share my screen with you, and we can go through the PowerPoint together, and I'll certainly be available to answer any questions, and I'm sure Bill will be available as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen with you right now, and just let me know to make sure that you're on screen with me so that we can kind of all see the same thing. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. All right, excellent. Thank you, Carla. And so we are calling this Perform in Your Strengths and Prosper. We love to see people prosper. It's been one of my dreams to coach people to a higher level of performance on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. I love working with people and to help them to prosper and to become the better version of themselves. So this is going to be called a little bit of developing your performance mindset. It's who I am. I'm a performance mindset coach, certified human behavior specialist and master trainer in the model of human behavior. And I've also got my Dale Carnegie training, right? I was a Dale Carnegie certified sales guy, a $1 million roundtable in 4 industries. That's what brought me to Alabama. I worked in sales with a 911 hardware software company in Huntsville, and was also working in human behavior. The company was bought by 2 of my friends. They invited me down to work with them on creating a human resources type package to understand if there was if the employees were in a good place, were they in the right seat on the bus, so to speak. And so we ended up having 5 employees that really weren't necessarily a proper fit. And so we repositioned 3 of them, and then we parted ways with the other 2. And then we got down to doing business because they invited me to stay with the company and get into sales. And so I did that task, and we actually ended up that company sold 2.5 years later for over $10 million. So I think we did a pretty good job of revamping the company and getting it back on its feet. But what an experience for me to be in Alabama to share this message, as well as just to learn the ways of the South, as they say. It was a really good experience for us. So let's go through the PowerPoint here together. It's going to take about 15 to 20 minutes. Just going to cover a couple of pieces of material. Just hopefully you can relate to some of the stuff that Bill and I are doing to help organizations, families, churches, schools, teams, anybody that wants to become the better version of themselves. I feel that we have a pretty good base program to help you to do that. A little bit about my story, from my success roadmap. I help and love to help people build successful connections. For me, my life is twofold. As a former professional hockey player, and for still I've coached professionally in the game of hockey at a very high level, an elite level. I also have run 8 different businesses, and I'm a business entrepreneur as well as an entrepreneur coach, leadership coach. I found the 2 businesses coming together when I learned about human behavior, and I was able to really map out a strategy to help both areas of my passion in working in competitive sports and in business. And so I ended up working with a number of very, very high level sports organizations, mostly in hockey, but not always. Baseball, we've got a couple of baseball championships. We've got soccer championships and a number of other teams like field hockey and rugby, golf, and many other sports that we work with through the NCAA, as well as private enterprises and pro teams. Also corporately with multi-million-dollar and billion-dollar companies working in the realm of leadership. I'm certified with John Maxwell as well in the leadership realm with the John Maxwell certified team members. I worked in the Canadian government, which was not necessarily the most enjoyable time, but learned a lot about people and what not to do in leadership. And then I was able to transfer that into a corporate training spiel for about I'd say 10 to 15 years with companies like Hillcorp Energy, IKEA, and Cardinal Glass. So a really, really fun experience for me. And of course, meeting Bill, and we talked about some of the synergies that we have together that we're going to present to companies, to teams and schools and organizations as well. So I always like to ask the question, how important are people to any purpose, cause, and belief? And I like to tell people and remind them that we have to recognize that we're all in the people business. When I used to show up at like the glass manufacturing company or in the financial sector or even in the energy sector, they would say, well, I would ask them, well, what kind of business are you in? And they'd say, well, we're in the energy business, or we're in the glass business, or we're in the athletics business. I said, well, that's kind of right. But I think more importantly than that, we're in the people business. You remember, I always used to tell them that in sports, balls don't move people, right? Hockey pucks don't move people. People move balls and people move hockey pucks. Business, right? Business doesn't move people. People move business. They sell products. Everything moves through people. But we don't spend a lot of time developing our people skills. How to get along with other people, how to communicate. John Maxwell wrote a great book, and it was one of my favorites by him. Many people communicate, but few connect. Right? We all have that ability to communicate with people, but are we really connecting with them? So what Bill and I like to talk about is developing people skills and developing your professional skills as well. So here's a question for you. I'd like to ask this as well. What percentage of performance do you think is mental versus physical? So I'm just going to get you to think about that yourself. Do you think it's 50-50, 60-40, 80-20, or maybe even 90-10? I talk about this in sports, and I talk about this in business performance. When it comes down to it, here's what I know. The research that I've done and the things that I've talked to people about, I know this for a fact. Harvard University tells us and states in their studies that it's 85% mental and 15% physical, right? As early as 1918, in a study by the Carnegie Foundation in the School of Engineering, they mentioned that they will have greater success as engineers if they switch their focus from being physical in terms of getting the job done in the engineering sector to dealing with their teams, helping them feel more engaged and more accepted and more appreciated. They said that the studies that they did on the mental side, on the emotional side, on the relational side, was equally, if not of greater importance than actually physically getting the job done. John Maxwell, the school that I went to get certified as well in leadership, he also states that it's an 80% to 20% ratio, 80% mental, 20% physical. As well, when I talk to clients, when I teach with teams, I talk about reaching their full potential. From our perspective, when we talk about performance mindset, I like to explain that before I understood the real impact of performance mindset, I operate in this sector right here, in the mind-body world, knowledge, experience, skill, and ability. Like many of my contemporaries and colleagues in the world of professional sports, it was all about your knowledge, skill, and ability, and your experience, right? Can you help me win more games? Can you help me get more points? Can you help me be a champion, right? It was all about doing things. In my business, it was all about making money. It was all about getting good product, quality service, keeping the customer happy. It was about doing things. It was about, what do you do? What do I do? How do we become successful? And I found myself to be very disappointed time after time, because I would have some success and then I would fail again. I would have some success and I would fail. It was like up and down, up and down, up and down, right? Where I met a gentleman in 1999, and he started talking to me in the world of athletics with one of the teams I was going to coach with him on. He says, I like to approach my athletes and we talk about the who I am question. And I ask my athletes, who are you? I want to build a relationship, a rapport, emotional connection, and build some mental wellness around that relationship. Because he said this, I find that when my athletes feel like I appreciate them, they will always do more than I expect. And I thought, wow, what a neat concept, right? And so I went from being a what I do kind of an individual from leadership and coaching to more of a who I am. And I ended up striking a balance in both who I am and what I do, but I lean more to the who I am side, right? When I celebrate people and appreciate people for who they are, my experience in the last 20 plus years has been that everybody I treat with respect, and I encourage them and empower them and motivate them and inspire them. they're always going to do more than I ever expected them to do. So this is a great equation. To further demonstrate this, with the school Notre Dame, Notre Dame Fighting Irish, we work with the hockey team there, and we started working with them in 2016, I believe it was 2016. Yeah, it was 6 years ago. We're heading into our 7th season this year. We approached Jeff Jackson, the head coach there at the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and we asked him the question, so what are you doing here to develop the minds of your student athletes? And he said, Gord, it's Notre Dame University. It's one of the most prestigious schools on the continent. And I visited some of their classrooms, and that's one of their classrooms. I took a picture. Phenomenal facilities, right? Everything is world class. And I said, yeah, I get it. They come out of there with a degree from Notre Dame, and they can get a job in just about any company in the country, and in fact all over the world. And I said, okay, let's talk about your athletes now. What about developing their bodies, right? And so he went on to show me their facilities, and we just toured the hockey facility. The hockey rink at the Compton Family Center is I think a $27 to $30 million building. Okay, for a college center, that's pretty good, right? But the gym that they have for their college athletes is $9 million worth of equipment in there. $9 million. And each athlete, there's 2 athletes, has a workstation. You can see this workstation over here. That's one workstation. That's another workstation. They had like 12 of those so that you could always work. An athlete never had to wait. They never had to wait. They could do their workouts so that one guy would be doing his workout, they'd take a break, the other guy would be doing his workout. Phenomenal gym, right? And so I said it's just so impressive that the Chicago Blackhawks from the National Hockey League would work out there in the preseason for their pro season at Notre Dame. And so much so they liked that they bought the blueprints of that facility, and they're building a replica stadium right near their professional hockey where they play their games. So that will become their practice facility. So it's a mirrored image of the Notre Dame facility. Pretty cool. So then we went on to ask Jeff Jackson, hey, Jeff, what about the spirit side? What about, the spirit of competition, the spirit of camaraderie? How are you teaching that? And how are you making that happen? What's your program look like? And how can we add to it? And he looked at me and he said, well, he says, we don't really have anything. I'm thinking, now let's put our heads together on this. Notre Dame, $72,500 per year to go there. And they were not developing the spirit side of their athletes, the personal, emotional, relational side of their athletes. And he said to me, well, coach, I guess that's where you come in. So I'm thinking, this is great, right? Multi-million-dollar contract perhaps. And he said, no, we have no budget. We have no budget for your program. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting, right? They're building the bodies of a pro athlete. They're building the student, right, to be educated, and yet to understand relationships, to understand communication, confidence, motivation, all the things that are essential to be skillful in life. They had no investment to make. So what we ended up doing was we talked to a number of members of the alumni organization, and the alumni ended up paying for our business, for our offering to the community at Notre Dame. So what a delight to be able to work with an organization like the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and so much so that their goal and their aspiration, of course, every team wants to win championships. And so we were so fortunate to be able to be a big part of them winning not 1 championship, but 2 championships. And they gave us a ring as a response from that. So really exciting to be able to have 2, not 1, but 2 Notre Dame Fighting Irish rings. And I get compliments on those all the time. I don't say that to impress you, but to impress upon you that the need for understanding human behavior as it pertains to performance is quintessential, right? It's a really, really important part of business. It's an important part of family, and it's an important part of athletics as well as everyday life. So what do we do exactly? What do Bill and I do? Our mindset coaching process is designed to impact 3 specific areas, but certainly more than that. Number 1, communication effectiveness. How can we effectively communicate with each other and other people so that we can really get our message across? You ever, I don't know if you guys grew up with this or not, but I grew up with this statement: treat people the way you want to be treated. Anybody else grew up with that, right? Treat people the way you want to be treated, right? Well, I don't think my parents meant to lie to me, but I found out through life, they said, because of my personality, I'm a very driven and I'm a very hard-nosed type of personality. And if I treat people the way I like to be treated, not many people would like to be around me. So what I did learn from my mentor, Dr. Robert Rome, was that we need to be thinking about treating people the way they want to be treated, right? And so that's what I needed to go to school. I needed to go to school on knowing what other people's communication was, what their personality was, what their behavior was, so I could communicate effectively with them to make sure I made a good connection. Next to that, I love leadership. I love the topic of leadership. I believe parents, teachers, coaches, business leaders, of course, we're all in a position of influence where we can lead in one way or another, right? So we're always leading if we have someone subordinate to us. So leadership influence was a big one, and I love and I really enjoy working in the realm of leadership. Thirdly, and this is one that's also a lot of fun for me, is to create ideal environments for performance excellence. Bill and I talk about this all the time, about creating ideal environments so that people can perform with no holds barred, nothing being held back. And so again, I always tell people that, I want to help you to feel appreciated. I don't ever want you to feel tolerated, right? So I'm looking to help you feel appreciated so you can be the best version of yourself. So that's kind of what we do. Well, how do we do that? We go about it using the human behavior approach to high performance. It's a little bit different from the way most people do, because a lot of people approach high performance with systems, right? What's your process? What are your steps? What is this? What is that? Well, when it comes to human behavior, it's a little harder. It's like nailing Jello to a wall. It's hard to do that, right? So we use a character-based psychometric tool. Now people say, what the heck is that? A character-based psychometric tool is very simple. It's the evaluation of psychological characteristics such as personality, intelligence, motivation, and values. These are very simple indicators, but we need to measure them using what we call psychometric tools, like personality assessments, like emotional intelligence assessments, like value assessments, different types of surveys that will give us a self-assessment answers so we can better understand who you are, who we are, and how we can make better connections. The second thing to this is emotional intelligence measurements. So when you use your psychometric tools to measure personality, intelligence, motivation, and value, once you know that information, you now have to know how to apply it, right? It's not just knowing the information, it's knowing how to apply it so you can become very, very successful. So next to that, where this helps, well, this helps in places like role assessment, team building, leadership, corporate culture, conflict resolution, and way, way more things. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? So there's lots of cool things that we can impact and influence with the area of understanding the role of human behavior in performance. Our training helps people understand others better so they can do three basic things: communicate easier, connect faster, and relate better together. So when I'm working in team environments, I always look to find the path of least resistance, right? Where can we find common ground? The more common ground that we can have with the fellow athletes that we're playing with in a team, the better performance we're going to have. We can equate that to a family. We can equate that to a business. We can equate that to a church or a school. Why? People are the common denominator, right? And so behavior is the one thing that we need to be aware of, and attitude, behavior and attitude. So to perform at high levels consistently, and that's really the key, organizations must be able to build trust and win people to their way of thinking. So we talk about influence, we talk about motivation, inspiration, encouragement, support, all of these different ways that you can communicate with people to help them understand, all right? So I use something called the farming analogy, and I heard this first back in 1991. I was attending a business conference with my wife because we were both in business together, running a home-based organization for a while. And this guy came out on stage, and he was the precursor to a lady later that evening who was going to speak to us on personalities. It was my first experience with this in business. And so the guy came out on the stage. He said, I want to talk to you about farming as it connects to leadership. I'm going, farming and leadership, this should be interesting, right? So he says, he asked the question, he says, what do farmers do? And I'm sitting on the front row. I like to sit front and center close to these things. And so I put my hand up, as many other people put their hands up, but he selected me and said, sir, what do farmers do? And I said, they grow things. And he says, actually, no. I turned to my wife and I said, I thought that was a pretty good answer. She said, me too. And I'm glad you answered and not me. Thanks, honey. Anyway, so he said, well, most people answer that farmers do grow things, but here's what he said. Farmers don't grow anything. In fact, he said, the ground grows things. Farmers make conditions right for growth. So as we equate that message now to leadership, He says, leaders need to learn how to create ideal environments so people feel celebrated, not tolerated. And I carried that message from 1991 into all the endeavors that I started to do forward from that, right? And so, and here's what he said: the way that you create ideal environments is by knowing human behavior. I'm thinking, wow, what a great segue. And with that, he finished up a few more points that he was sharing, and he brought Florence Littauer out. And Florence Littauer started teaching my wife and I and the rest of the organization, there was about 3,000 people, about the power of human behavior through a psychometric measurement tool like personality assessments, right? Like character assessments. Really, really powerful. It changed the way that I started doing business. So the personal and professional development process works like this. We provide communication style profile discovery process, and we also provide the communications training for increased confidence. What this does for us is it gives us right away, it gives us a self-assessment of your personality and behavior so that we increase awareness about who you are, who we are, and how we can better connect. That's the improved connection part. Building ideal working environments, which is where the end goal is about creating that culture where, again, we all feel celebrated. So pretty cool. And so really the objectives are threefold. One of them is for you to establish self-awareness, knowing who you are, what you value, and your basic needs. What are they? And the key emotions and competencies that make you you. Everybody, if I say to some people when we're doing interviews or when we're meeting people for the first time, I'll say, can you provide for me 3 words that describe you in your behavior and attitude? Can you give me 3 words or 3 values that describe you in your personality? And many people can give me 1 word, sometimes 2, but never usually 3. Very interesting, right? Because again, it's not something that we're taught to think about. Whereas when we go through these training objectives that we have, we teach people up to 20 key value words as part of their what we call value proposition, so that they begin to understand that they've got a lot that they're bringing to the table and they don't even realize it. Number 2 is knowing the people around you. When you begin to know things about yourself, you know what it does? It opens your eyes and illuminates people around you, because we're similar in some regards, right? But we're not quite the same, right? The mindset training methodology helps leaders understand how to connect and engage with all personality styles to build deeper trust, which is really important and a key component to building relationships. And step number 3 is to build better connections. Identify the character traits that thrive in a competitive environment and those that need more encouragement, motivation, and inspiration. So I'd like to start with just show you a video here. It's a kind of a fun video, but it makes a key point. You know, we say that we should learn another person's communication language. We should learn how to motivate them. What turns them on? What gets them going? What really engages them? How can I win people to my way of thinking? People want you to speak their language. I want you to speak my language so that we can get along better. Here's a little video just to kind of demonstrate what we're talking about when you want to learn somebody else's language and how important it is. Let's have a look.
Das hier ist in meinem Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Bild des Überlebensradar. Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you? Hold on. We are thinking. We are thinking. Hello. This is the German Coast Guard. We're thinking. What are you thinking about?
So clearly, when this individual obviously took the interview and they said, hey, can you speak English? He said, yeah, I can speak English, but could he understand English? That would have been the better question, right? Do you understand English? Because he clearly knew how to speak English, but he didn't really understand. The language of human behavior. That's what's so cool about the language of human behavior. Everybody speaks a little bit differently. They're motivated a little bit differently, and they understand and listen a little bit differently. Wouldn't it be cool to learn how to speak those different languages so people will listen more intently? So communication as it connects to character and personality, we use the model of DISC. There are many other models out there. There's Myers-Briggs, there's colors, there's Enneagram, there's all kinds of them. I've been working with the DISC model of human behavior, and I've worked with Myers-Briggs. I've been through that program. I know the 16 different languages. The thing with Myers-Briggs is that it's clinical in its application, and most people can't remember who they are. Okay. The whole purpose of doing these things is remember who you are, right? We call it memory recall, right? So we want to increase memory recall for people that participate with us using these psychometric tools. So what I found was, and I started with DISC back in I think it was 1992, after the Florence Littauer personality program, which was really interesting. But again, people didn't really understand it because it was older terminology, older English and Greek terminology, phlegmatic, choleric, sanguine, and melancholy. And so that didn't last very long. So we found DISC, and it was really good, but it was very sterile. In 1996, I saw Dr. Rome's version, which is what we're going to show you here tonight. And it was just fantastic. It was, the clarity was good. I was able to recall the letters and the words and the colors that he was using. And I thought, man, this is great. So here's what he showed us. The DISC model is exactly 4 temperaments. You're either outgoing or reserved, right? You can't be both. Most people that are outgoing are not reserved. Most people that are reserved are not outgoing. It's just the way it is. We're wired a certain way. And PACE is how you figure out if somebody's an energetic person or an easygoing person, right? PACE, the PACE perspective. The next thing we look at is where they set their priorities. They're either task or people. Now, the cool thing about task is that you have both of those, some to a greater degree, some to a lesser degree. For me, I'm more task oriented on the task side. I'm a little less people oriented, but I'm fairly even. But my wife, she's all task and very little people. That's for wonder we're even together today. But I guess I've won her over in some way. That's good sales, I guess. So let's do this. Let's identify the D, I, S, and C in terms of characterization. The D personality is known as the direct dominant style. The I personality is known as the influencing and inspiring style. The S personality is known as the supportive, sharing style. And the C personality is known as the cautious and curious style. Now, cool thing is we have all 4 in us, some to a greater, some to a lesser degree. So I have a lot of D and I in me. I have a lot less C and S, but I still leverage some of that to get results in my D and I. And we can explain that certainly at a later date. But this is the model of human behavior using the DISC methodology. Let's give you a few more descriptors to help you out. The D-type personality, they're known as confident, persistent, ambitious, and firm. The I personalities are known as talkative, excitable, happy, and personable. The S-type personalities are calm, soft-hearted, reliable, and practical. And the C-type personalities are conservative, neat, thorough, and orderly. Now, you can probably isolate maybe your spouse, maybe a family member. You can think, oh yeah, that person is this, and oh, I think I'm this. And you can think about different people in your life that you work with. Oh, my boss is definitely that, right? Or my wife is definitely this, or my husband is definitely that. It's kind of fun to kind of do that as we work through these different profiles. But remember, we have a blend of all 4 of these in us, some to a greater, some to a lesser degree. And that's where I found this fascinating, to apply it to competition, to apply it to sports, to apply it to the different arenas in my business, right? How it would make me more effective as a business leader, as a professional hockey coach, as a parent, as a husband, right? And just as an all-around good guy, right? Just to know all these different skills, right? Pretty cool. All right, so what we do is we provide the psychometric measurement of the DISC profile, the character profile assessment. This particular graph is Bill's, so you can see the 2 different graphings that we give him, and that he basically answered the questions and provide us insight. When we have this information, we know 2 things. What are Bill's basic needs, and what does he value? When I have those 2 pieces of information contained in this 6 pages, I can basically build the ideal environment for Bill where he feels celebrated and not tolerated most of the time, right? And that's pretty cool. And I've been able to do that for over the last 20 to 25 years. So here's an example of how this works. A good friend of mine that works in the professional hockey realm, Steve Briere, he coaches for the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is one of his athletes that was working with him. And because Steve knows this training, I share this with him. I do work with this organization as well as like Notre Dame and other organizations as well. We teach coaches on how to recognize in their athletes, because they're already really good athletes. They want to know what kind of people they are so they can use that information to help them perform even greater in their athletic realm. So these are 2 distinct different personalities. Have a look here on this side. This one says CS. See the dot down here is down in the C quadrant. Over here, Steve is an IDS. He's up in this quadrant. So they're opposite traits. Here's the difference. Let me demonstrate a couple of things here for you. The C personality style on the other side, right? This one over here. That's the quality detailed. They like quality and detailed information. They like quality answers to all of their questions. They like excellence, policies and procedures, and they like time to think. Don't push me. They're reserved, right? They want time to think. Steve on the other side, okay, on this side over here, he likes to make things fun. He's high energy, recognition, fast pace, seeks approval, and he decides quickly. Let's go, let's go. This is a disaster in the making, unless you understand and know the human behavior language of DISC and the application theories of emotional intelligence. Steve is well trained in this, and Steve has now been a professional coach in the National Hockey League for 7 seasons and a very successful. He's the second highest paid goalie coach in the National Hockey League because he's so good at what he does. And he calls me his secret weapon. I said, I don't want to be your secret weapon. Could you tell a few people about me so I can get the money that you're making? So don't make me your secret weapon. Like, tell a few people. So what we do is we go through an exercise. Bill and I, when we go through our training sessions, this is the sheet that we use to get you started, to kind of get you excited about your personality. We teach you about the D, individual, the I, the S, and the C, individual personalities, and how they come together to make your style blend. We give you the D, the I, the S, and the C words. We give you all the details of the person's character, what they like in each of the segments, and what their secret tip is. So we go through about an hour training with you. We give you your personality profile, and we give you all the great things that make you you. And then we also go on to different realms of applying human behavior, right? We talk about, how do we apply this to our life? How do we resolve conflict? How do we listen better? How do we lead and inspire and encourage and motivate and support the people that we know? How do we get to know our children better? How do we get to know our employees better? How do we get to know our athletes better so they can perform to their highest potential? The tagline for my company, Performance Mindset Coach, empowering people to their full potential, right? So that's what I love to do. But I'm not Karnak the Incredible. I need a psychometric tool to tell me, you're going to tell me who you are, and I'm going to tell you what to do with who you are if you want to be successful. And you know what? It really is a win-win. It's a win-win scenario because you're giving me information, you're giving Bill information about the ways that we can create an environment for performance. And that's really where you want to be ideally, because everybody wins, right? In a team that's all working together for the same cause. And there you go. That's our presentation for this evening. It's about the whole prosperity mindset coach. It's about performing to a high level of performance in a performance environment. So there you go.
Coach, what you don't know
You guys
is
have any questions or anything, but I'd be happy to sit for some questions.
Carla's going to have some questions, I'm sure. But one of the things that I never told you was I probably worked with her for what, 8 years? How long have you been there now?
The 28th of this month will be 9.
9 years. And
Not
so
that she's counting. Not that she's counting. No.
right.
Not that I'm
But
counting.
she's had the well, I won't say pleasure, but
Pleasure?
she knows me as well as anybody else does.
Right on.
And one thing that's interesting is that she knows that I am in the work environment, that I'm very cautious. And the way my personality is, whenever I'm not under stress, is cautious, supportive, and a little bit of inspiration.
Yep.
But one thing that I found out about myself that I really never knew, and you know how old I am, so we won't go there right now. But
Your experience.
Yes, but
Wise.
Wise.
Well, if I had been really wise, I would have learned this 50 years ago, so that I could recognize one of the weaknesses of a cautious individual, and that I am usually still thinking about something you said after you've moved on 3 or 4 minutes later. And then you see that puzzled look, or I say something and you realize, where has he been the last 5 minutes?
He's still processing.
Exactly. Last night at church, we were having a board meeting, and there was a lady there, and she was concerned that one of the people that was supposed to be there wasn't. And the meeting's going on. About 4 minutes later, she says, well, he said he would be here, and he knew about. And I'm thinking, you have missed a good bit of this presentation that somebody was given because of your being that type of personality type. And I was telling Brenda this morning, she is just like me. And Brenda told me, I was telling her, I don't know what all I've missed because I've not worked on that or developed that. And Brenda said, you have really missed a lot with your children and your grandchildren. And, I really don't have time to waste anymore, to miss those things. One of the things that Coach Gord and I talked about earlier today was that same hockey player, that goalie, was about to retire. He was on his way out.
Yep.
And because the coach took a different approach with him, he got 8 more seasons out of it.
Yep.
And what's amazing is some of the people who are burnout or trying to quit too soon have still got more to offer than they realize if someone can just kind of flip the switch and develop that relationship with them. And so that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, is the possibility of expanding ministry outside the church, working with younger folks instead of just Medicare folks and different employer groups. But it's amazing to me the impact that I want to make in the time that God gives me before he calls me home. Or either he comes back, and I'm just excited about the possibility of catching some people much younger in their life, so that they're able to use these communication skills. They know themselves like I haven't known myself for a long time. Brenda knows me better than I do. Carla, for the last 8 years, she probably knows me better than I do, knowing myself. So those are the types of things that I think are kind of neat.
It's good insight. It's very good insight.
And you already have had that impact. I mean, you look at people like Andy, who has been your protege for a number of years and impacting young lives, and you see where he is today. And a lot of that's through your guidance and support, all of those things that you've given him because you recognized in him what he needed fostered in order to be successful.
Well, and
you may not have recognized it in yourself, but you do see it in others already, and you have.
But I want to be more intentional in the way I relate with people, so that it's not so much casual, but recognizing that there is a legacy that I do want to leave that is going to enable other people to learn at an earlier age skills that will help them communicate, help them develop, and be able to impact others as well. When you think about people the age of Andy and Samantha, they are entering into their struggles with raising a family. So many of us just did the best we could, and some of it seemed to work out all right, and some of it didn't. But I wonder what it would have been like, or could be like, for someone to be mentored at a much earlier age or coached in that regard. One of the things that I was thinking about when Coach Gord was talking is about that Larry has got to be a high I, inspirational, talkative, and not. Coach,
I'm not seeing that.
If he speaks other than hello or something like that, if he speaks a whole sentence, he has gone well beyond his boundaries. And yet, there's something about Larry that is so calm, and I would say supportive. I wouldn't find him dominant, or I don't know how cautious he is, but I'm sure that Carla has recognized something in him, and he and her, that brought them together. And I just kind of like, I wish I could do it sometimes. I kind of like the way he just sits back and smiles and does, he's just there. He's supporting, and anyway.
He's he is definitely a lot of that. He talks regularly. He has opinions. He has strong opinions sometimes. And I
In a familiar territory, probably, right? It has to be familiar.
Yeah, a little bit. It's, even in familiar territory, he's not this limelight seeker. It's not what he is.
Yep.
And so I had great fun at the Rotary convention because the multi-district convention for Rotary was also fell on his birthday. So I had 200 and something odd people have him stand up and sing happy birthday to him.
Which I'm sure he enjoyed.
So he got to be in the limelight, and he got to talk to a lot of people who do a lot of things in Rotary, and sparked his interest a little more. And he had conversations all by himself. Bill, you'd have been proud. I wasn't even part of the conversations. I was off talking to other people, and Larry can carry it all on his own without a problem.
All right.
Bravo.
Yeah. So Gordon, looking at or listening to what Bill has said, when you think about those you mentor, whether they're someone in Bill's age range or someone younger, how do you characterize that impact? I think I know the impact Bill's had on people that I've been around, who he's been around. I don't think necessarily being intentional in doing something necessarily means that you did it naturally is not intentional, and he just does it naturally. So I don't think that's less intentional. He doesn't have to think about it all the time. He just provides that environment. So when you talk about impacting younger people or impacting people in the workforce or impacting people in our Rotary clubs, where we have a huge deficit in younger people and we're trying to bring more people in, as somebody who works with these personalities and identifying those characteristics, what's the difference in dealing with this younger group and dealing with the slightly more mature and wise group?
That's a really good question. I think when you look at the function of an organization like Rotary or Chamber of Commerce or an association, I think you have to go back to the function of the organization, right? There's two ways to look at it. So you could be very systemic in your approach and say, okay, well, what's the function? Well, we have mission, vision, and culture, right? What's the mission? What's the vision? What's our culture, right? And so to a young person, that could have some appeal, but I deal a lot in marketing and sales, obviously, with my Carnegie background and my very reserved personality, and so I find that, we talk a lot about, well, how do I win people to my way of thinking? And so in getting people to get involved in, say, a cause or an organization or an association or a belief, they have to be able to relate to it and own it. Does that make sense? There has to be the law of attraction has to be in play. And so when you think about, let's use sales, for example, I can't sell anything to anyone, right? It's not about me being able to sell. It's about finding the need, right? So if somebody, I always use this expression, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still, right? So, I remember the story of, this little boy who, she was working in the garden, but she was, there was some tools out there that he was small. So, she didn't want him to fall and land on these tools like spades and stuff like that, and these garden tools. And she said, I want you to go wait up on the gallery, on the porch. We call it gallery in Canada, up on the porch. And she goes, and he goes, I don't want to. She says, no, you need to go up on the porch. So, you're not going to, says, and so finally says, you get up there on that porch. She marches up the stairs and stands around. She says, fine. I'm up here in my body, but in my head, I'm still down there. Right? It's a classic example of a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. And so to get people involved in anything, and you say, is it easier to work with old people, young people, middle-aged people? It's based on need. It's based on desire. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I can't convince somebody to do things or want things that they don't want to have. So I have to appeal to the greater need of the individual. And here's what I sell. Whenever you're trying to sell a program, whenever you're trying to sell something, don't sell the program. Sell the benefit to the individual. What's the benefit to the individual to be involved in something like this? That's what's going to sell them. And so when I hire somebody to work for me, I can hire them to get a paycheck. But you know what's going to happen when a bigger paycheck comes along? They're going to go there. But if I hire somebody who believes in what I'm doing and wants to be a part of what I'm doing, they're with me for the long haul. Money doesn't become as relative. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So again, I think people to understand that they want to be a part of what you're doing. So I try to give ownership to people as much as possible. Why is it good for them to be part of my association? Why is it good for them to be part of my group? Why is it good for them to be a part of my team? Because I try to work with people collaboratively, because they say, well, I want to do what you do. I said, well, great, let's work together. Let's find something that we can do together. And you know what that does? It gives them a sense of ownership. It gives them a sense of investment. And now they're in, right? You see, I have to win them in the head. I have to win them in the heart. I have to win them in the spirit. So you talk about the 5 elements of human behavior. Think about it. The task side. So we know about task and people now, right? The disc, outgoing and reserved, task and people. Okay. Task is physical. It's just one element. That's it. Championships, clothing, income, title, position, goals, right? Whatever. It's physical. It's something, right? On this side, on the people side, is 4 things. It's mental, mindset, heart, emotional, spiritual, being, and relationship, one-to-one, one to another. But you have to hit on all 4. Over here is easy. You don't miss your goal, set a new objective and you go. But over here, you got to have appeal. You got to inspire. You got to encourage. You got to motivate. You got to be really good at working the soft skills in people. So win them to your way of thinking. That's only one part of the 4. If you've only got one part, you still got 3 more to go, right? So that's why you have to become the master communicator to make sure you're hitting them where they intellectually understand, they emotionally feel, they spiritually sense, and they relationally connect. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
Very
the
good.
science. That's the science.
I love it. I love it. And thank you for sharing it with us.
You're welcome.
So I appreciate you being here tonight. And I'm here a lot of times to say, why do you do this? You know, how we preach that or ask that of those that we want to join us. And for me, you know, what's that benefit to me? I get to learn something. I get to meet people. You know, I love this because I
How does that make you feel? Right?
Always good.
Because you say, I get to meet people. That's over here. That's a task side. I get to do things. That's over here. Right?
You have to learn things.
Yeah. That's still over here.
Yep.
How does it make you feel? Right? How do you feel in your spirit? How do you feel intellectually? How do you feel emotionally? Are you engaged? You know, I have new friends that make me feel accepted and feel desired and wanted. I feel like I'm a part of something special, right? Now you're getting into the emotional. Now you're getting into the spiritual essence. So you can't put your hands on that, right? So I would tell people, if you're going to sell something, here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to do it. Here's why it's going to work. And here's why you're going to love it. So it's what, how, why. What, how, why, right? It's never just the what and the how. People always stop at the what and the how. Why is it going to work? And why are you going to love it? That's the hook. If you can hook, that's why it was $1 million round table in 4 different industries. It wasn't about the product I was selling. It was, I got to hook them on why it was going to benefit them and why they were going to love it. They can see themselves driving that vehicle. They can see themselves wearing that piece of clothing. They can see themselves enjoying that vacation, right? Whatever I was selling, it was about their enjoyment, not mine. It wasn't about me. It was about them. So anything you do, association, team, commitment, family, it's about being a part of something that will make them feel better. People are not going to remember what you say. They're not going to remember what you do. They're going to remember how you made them feel.
Perfect. I agree. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bill, any thoughts before we sign off here?
Excuse me?
Bill?
Yes.
I said, any thoughts before we sign off here? Thank you for bringing Gordon to us.
I think the last thing that you said is related to the Rotary organization is to make sure that whenever we're talking to others about Rotary, it is going to tell them about what they're going to get out of it and why they're going to enjoy it. And that'll be translating what you are getting out of it in a way that they will be able to sense it and feel it and whatnot. And yeah. I wish that Jack had been here tonight, because Jack is one of the younger Rotarians, Gord, that I talked to you about. He's the guy that was in the municipal building that I think was 15 people died that day, 2 in the parking lot and the rest of them up in the building. And yet it's been a life-changing event for him, and it's developed a life message to come from him. And so those are the types of people that, gosh, this happened, I guess, was he 19 at the time? And he's now 24, 25. So he's had some years and some therapy to go through in order to be able to get to a point to where he can tell his message to others and share it with others. And he's got a message of hope about how he was brought through that and the things that helped him. So as I think about the need for support, there's so many people going through so many things that are difficult, and there's just so many crises in life that we're all facing that we need to share with them those things that you mentioned that will help them to get through, to have hope, to feel better about the possibilities, instead of being crushed and worn down by just the everyday living of life.
Yeah, see things in the light of their potential and see people in the light of their potential. Two visuals I have. And I'm all for intent. People talk about being intentional, and that's great. I'm all for being intentional. I'm much more dialed into being deliberate, because everybody has intention. Oh, I had the intention of doing that. I intended to do this and I intended to do that. Okay, but were you deliberate? Did you follow through? I like being deliberate. Intentional is great, don't get me wrong, but are you able to follow through and deliberately do what you meant to set out to do?
Okay,
Great words.
And I do have my Alabama hat right nearby. Roll Tide,
Nice.
right?
There you go, Roll Tide.
All right.
Well, we have kept you a little long. I'm going to go through the 4-way test real quick. Bill, you probably know it by now. And Gordon, I don't know. And if you're ever interested in Rotary, we'd be happy to talk to you about that too. But I'll go through that. And then I'm going to stop the recording. If you'll hang out for just a second, I have a question for you before you sign off, Gordon. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And thank you all for being with us tonight, and look forward to seeing you on June 7th. So.